Doc, who's got the first document?
The St. Clair County Board of Commissioners Human Services Committee will come to order. The clerk will call the roll.
Commissioner Samasco?
Here.
Commissioner Ward?
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Here.
Commissioner Bohm? Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner GRATOPP?
Here.
Commissioner London?
Here. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have the agenda before us. Any additions or deletions or changes to the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you, Tim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. The agenda stands. Number 3, item 3 is citizens to be heard. Are there any citizens to be heard this evening? Citizens to be heard. Seeing none, we will move down to updates. Any updates from commissioners or Mr. Kaufman? No updates. We'll go to conceptual initiatives. Any conceptual initiatives? Seeing none, down to old business. And down to new business. Item A, library director appointment and employment agreement, which you have a revised copy before you, gentlemen.
Chairman, if I may move to send that on to the full board.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
That was kind of a tie there. Did you get that? Which one came first?
I did.
Is there any discussion on the contract before us? Most of the changes that we have on the contract before you were just stipulations on clarifying and dates and so on and so forth. Bill Kaufman's title was changed. So is there any,
I just
Tim.
have a question that really doesn't pertain to this contract, but it's just more of an informational thing. You know, Bill, I recall that you have a contract.
Yes.
There's this contract. How many other contracts are out there just in general, and how do we decide who gets one and who doesn't?
Well, this is probably I believe this is number 5 in employment contracts. The others are with the health director, Dr. Mercantile, the coroner, Dr. Spitz, the Marine Division Lieutenant Dennis Morey, myself, and now with Ms. Arnold. Those are the only ones. I think it depends on the type of position that you're recruiting for.
Sure.
And certainly if you think of those that I just named off, they're very specialized. They require a high level of education.
I understand it's not unusual in my day job industry for contracts, so.
and again, one other thing before we go ahead, I think it's fair to say, I think you can see on the information that this was approved by the library board, and the contract was negotiated with Allison, and you have the results in writing. Any discussion? Commissioner Heidemann?
I would just say, I'm just excited to have Allison aboard.
Well, I guess I should say, I also met with Allison yesterday for a short visit, just to see how she was, and she's extremely excited and looking forward to the new position. And she's with us tonight. She's back there smiling. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, other human services matters. Number 8, are there any other human services matters we should be talking about tonight? Seeing none, moving to item 9, information only. No information only. I would accept a motion to receive and file packets.
So moved. Support.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion
Opposed,
to
nay.
adjourn?
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
No, say nay. Meeting adjourned. You're so fast I couldn't keep up with you.
your motion, buddy. Thank you. I'd like to call to order the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners Judiciary and Public Safety Committee meeting. Would the clerk take the roll, please?
Commissioner Samasco?
Here.
Commissioner Ward?
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Here.
Commissioner Bohm? Commissioner London?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner Greatop?
Here. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? Hearing none then.
I would move the approval of the agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved and supported. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Are there any citizens wishing to address the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee? Hearing none. I see, are there any updates from any of the commissioners? Or conceptual initiatives from the administrator? No old business. Under new business, item A, the agreement for law enforcement services for the city of Algonac.
I'd make
You
a-
have in your packet a contract, you have a letter, followed by a contract that was, for your information, approved 7-0 last Tuesday night in Algonac. Sheriff Donlin was down there, I was there, and they voted 7-0 to go ahead and accept this contract. So if you have questions, or if you want to make a motion, either way.
I'd make a motion to pass this on to full board for the City of Algonac law enforcement contract, and I would just
Support.
commend the sheriff for working together with the City of Algonac. It just looks like a win-win for both.
Okay. I have a motion and a support. Are there any other comments other than Commissioner Ward? I would also like to reiterate what Commissioner Ward just said. I sat in on most all of the meetings. I had met with the city, and I talked to all the individual council members at different times with different questions, and I was thoroughly pleased and very proud that Tim did an excellent job. And I must also say that Doug Alexander also did a very good job. The city was most impressed with the presentation that he put together. He actually put everything into a binder, and he tabbed everything, and he color-coded it, and they followed through it. And I've been in Algonac a long time, and I was very proud of the city council. They came through what would be a very difficult time when a city gives up a police department that's been there as long as they have and turns it over to the sheriff to run. It was going to be a tough thing, and they actually did it in a very, very smooth manner. So my congratulations to the city of Algonac, Doug Alexander, and also to Sheriff Donlin and his crew. They did an excellent job, so.
I would just say, I would add too, that Tim, along with the other things that's going on in the sheriff's office, I would also commend you. I think it was an excellent job, and we're so pleased to be able to partner with Algonac and get the job done, and we know that you're going to do the job, and I'm very confident that you'll work out the details.
Thank you, Commissioner Greatop and Bowman. They've both been at a number of meetings with us, and it was almost excellent down there, so we're looking forward to the transition.
Good. Commissioner Heidemann?
I was just going to mention, the discussion about collaboration, looking for opportunities where we can collaborate with units of government, whether they're townships or cities or where. And this is an excellent example of where we can do that and still provide, if I read it correctly, the same level of service that the community requested.
It is exactly the same service they were getting and that they requested. And the other thing that was really nice about this, the city council was most concerned. I think their primary concern was one of two. I mean, it was a toss-up whether it was to save money or to save jobs, but they really wanted to do both. And when Sheriff Donlin came in, he was able to do that because he saved them a couple $100,000 a year on a 3-year contract, and 5 of the 6 people down there applied to the sheriff's department, passed all the tests and the screening, and are now going to be employed by the sheriff's department. One of them chose not to, and he's going to do whatever he decides he wants to do. So they did save those jobs. And the other thing they did was the city kicked in the amount of money necessary to keep the reserve program going. There are 4 reserve officers who will now be wearing brown. And I was excited about that part too, because those guys wanted those part-time jobs. And in addition to that, it may give the sheriff another resource down the road if he happens to need or call on some additional help for some other things. Obviously, they're for Algonac, and Algonac is paying them, but Sheriff Donlin may need them for something someday, and he could pay them accordingly. So it's just another resource for him. So I was very pleased with everything.
Just one, this like what Howard said. Governor Snyder has wanted municipalities and communities to work in collaboration throughout the state, but historically, St. Clair County has always done that. You can look back and look at the fire departments, the police departments. Historically, we've already been doing that for a long time, so this is just continuing effort that St. Clair has always been doing.
Very good. Anything else? If not, then we'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. It will go to the full board. Item 7B is the agreement for law enforcement services for East China Township. Again, you have that in your packet, and everybody's had a chance to read it. There's a cover letter went with it. If you have any questions,
I move that we forward this to the full board.
I have a motion
Second?
and a support. Are there any questions? Gentlemen, are you paying attention over there?
We are paying strict attention. We're taking notes, actually. Go ahead. You didn't interrupt me.
Very good, thank you.
He was in the classroom way too long.
I can tell he's a teacher. Can't you tell the guy was
It's
a
vice
teacher?
chairman to you, I might add.
I used to have the look, I don't have it anymore.
You know the guys in the back bench aren't paying attention. I mean, that's just,
That's why you're in the back, right? All right. Any discussion on the East China Township piece?
Another good piece of work. So just another good piece of work.
Very good. If there are no questions, then we'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good, motion carries. And the last item that I have on 7C is the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Award. It was in the amount of, I don't see it in front of me here, but it was in the amount of $14,576. Thank you, Commissioner Rushing. That was applied for at some time. It has been awarded, and the sheriff has some plans for that money, but we do need to move that on to the full board for final approval.
This is great, there's no local match.
Correct.
What is a system support vehicle? Is it a special kind of vehicle, or just it's used in a special manner? Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
CAR.
No, that was an idea we had of a system support vehicle, and I kind of said the same thing when I saw that. It's not a traditional Crown Vic patrol vehicle. It was an unmarked vehicle, much like a detective car was what that was, is a support vehicle. No lights, no siren. It was going to be used for one of our plainclothes deputies that we'll talk about later tonight. With the time that the grant came in, we weren't able to put that money toward a vehicle. What we plan on using the funds for is through the government program with the downsizing of the military, where we've been able to pick up a number of rifles through Candace Miller's office out of Selfridge. With the downsizing in both theater, these weapons are coming home, so we now have rifles that we can put in the patrol vehicles that would run about $1,500 a piece, and we get about 45 of them from the government. We're going to need stands or holders inside the cars, and that's what we'll spend the money on toward that. So that is the funds, not for a vehicle at this time.
Oh, okay.
Also, I just want to touch on the China Township while I'm here. The Township Supervisor, Jack Randolph, did great work with us on that. We had it picked up and done in July. Doesn't go into effect till January. There's going to be a changing of the board, and it was just much easier to get out in front of that, do it this summer, have it done this fall, so we don't have to worry about it with the new board. So that worked out very well, and we're very excited about Algonac. Algonac approached us because their chief took a new job, so they were in a transition period, and the chief also endorsed the transition, which makes things extremely smooth for us as well as the employees. So we're happy about all of the changes underfoot.
Thank you, Sheriff.
You're welcome.
Did you get a motion?
Not yet.
I make a motion to accept
Motion
the
by
grant.
Ward and supported by
second,
Commissioner Heiderman. Or some ask of either one.
snooze, you lose.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Are there any other judiciary public safety matters to come before the committee tonight?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make a comment on our meeting that we had last month with the Township Association. We discussed the fact that Clay Township was the only one that not in Central Dispatch, now that Port Huron is in and the whole county is. And so the only reason that I brought that up is because we talked about collaboration and partnership with other things, and I think we should definitely move forward. And they seemed open to the discussion, and I'm willing to to work with anybody on the board as well to see if we could somehow accomplish that, so that we could save them money and us as well on that issue.
Thank you. Anything else? No information only, receive and file then.
Make a motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Move to adjourn.
Or
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
pressure's on Howard.
Yes. Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting of the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners Environmental and Public Works Committee meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Samasco,
Here.
Commissioner Ward,
Here.
Commissioner Bohm, Commissioner London,
Here.
Commissioner Rushing,
Here.
Commissioner Greatop,
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann.
Here. Any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion
Move to approve the agenda as submitted, Mr. Chairman.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Greatop. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Any citizens to be heard? None. Updates. Any updates from commissioners? I would just like to make one update. I'm sure many of you were out to the Goodles, to the county fair, and I spent a couple of days out there and had a chance to visit with people, and they were just, I didn't hear anything but really positive things about the fair. Checked out the new Quonset hut, working really well. They had little portable stables in there, and the equestrians were stuffed all over the place. They said they had initially over 300 equestrians registered to be out there for the fair. Only 280 showed up. That's a huge number of horses and riders out there. I will tell you, we did the two riding rinks, you know, where we put in the sand and put drainage in, and there's a small practice ring, and it was literally mud. And I noticed some of the equestrians were over there riding around in there, and it kind of alarmed me, because in that kind of mud, especially with clay, and it's easy for the horse and rider to slip. And I'm wondering if maybe we don't need to mention the Park and Rec to see what it would cost to make that an acceptable riding arena. I was fearful for the riders and the horses, yeah, that's all. And I do know they want to practice and need to go someplace to ride, that sort of thing. Mr. Greatop.
Yeah, on an update also, you and I were both out to the landfill the other day, and the Michigan Economic Development Corporation was out there. One of their directors and one of their managers came out there and saw a presentation given by Tay Young, and thought it was very well done, and I believe that they were thoroughly impressed. We've done a pretty good job in the past year of getting a lot of people out there from the EPA and Michigan Economic Development Corporation. We've had Senator Levin out there, Candace Miller's been out there before. I think we've done a good job of really trying to sell this thing, and I think a lot of people have seen it, and it doesn't do anything but make it all the better, I think.
Yeah, I think what's happened is we probably, to some extent, may have skipped over our own public and gone directly to, key players like Senator Levin and Representative Miller. And one of the fellas from, I think his name was John from MEDC. I mentioned, I said, really be great.
Steve and Robert.
Steve? Anyways, I said, it'd be really great if we could get the governor to come out here. And he says, we'll see if we can make that happen. So these fellows were pretty high up on the food chain over at the Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
It was good.
Mr. Chairman, if I could go back, may I go back just a moment to what you started to talk about at the fairgrounds? And you and I were out there passing out awards, and I wanted to let the rest of the board know that Howard and I were there, and Senator Pavloff and Judge Adair, and there were 4 of us, and we must have presented, what would you say, 250 awards? And that was a real thrill, a real great time that we had out there watching these kids receive those awards, and it was just
Well,
very enjoyable. I'm glad that I was able to come out.
One of the most impressive things about that whole award ceremony was a young lady that is queen of the 4-H, and I don't remember her name again. I should have put it down, but she did an outstanding job. So articulate, so poised, and it made me extremely proud of our young people and what they're capable of doing. And I think with all the awards that we gave out and trophies, it was definitely well worth the time and very enjoyable. Commissioner Rushing.
Yeah, this was my first time out there. I got 2 excellent letters from 2 kids that are in 4-H in Wales Township, and they had 4 pigs and a cow that were part of the auction. And talk about 2 great kids, and I mean, there's a lot of great kids out there. But ended up going to the auction, and somewhere down here, I'll maybe bring in parts of the 2nd place pig. So I did bid on that, and I won that one. So it was great to be there, and I'll be going to all the future auctions.
I was at the auction too, and I missed you. But I bid on turkeys, but I didn't get a turkey.
I hear Pam Wall beat you out.
I think she may have. $50 wasn't going to buy a turkey. Okay, anyway, it was a great fair, and I'm really proud of the people that put it on and all of the young participants. Conceptual initiatives, anything? Nothing? No old business, no new business, no reports from Smiths Creek, no environmental public works. Are there any other environmental or public works matters?
Don't think so.
Seeing none, no information was handed out.
Move to receive and file packets, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, do we have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
We are adjourned.
At this time, I call the St. Clair County Board of Commissioners Ways and Means Committee to order. Take the roll, please.
Commissioner Samasco?
Here.
Commissioner Heidemann?
Here.
Commissioner Bohm? Commissioner London?
Here.
Commissioner Rushing?
Here.
Commissioner GRATOPP?
Here?
Commissioner Ward?
Here. There are proposed additions, if somebody would.
I would move that we add the following additions under conceptual initiatives. Item B, the qualification-based selection presentation from Bruce Cuffer. And under updates, the status of the employee group waiver program.
Okay, but I might suggest with conceptual initiatives, that'd be an item A, and then it's B for the others.
Okay,
Yeah.
that, just reverse those letters.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Is there,
B for update and A for conceptual initiative.
is there support for that?
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. And now to approve the amended agenda?
So
I would,
moved.
I would second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Are there any citizens to be heard on Ways and Means matters? Updates. Mr. Kaufman, I'm assuming you're going to talk about the items at our place?
Actually, I believe the first item is budget, and
Maybe
our
Carrie's gonna-
finance director, Carrie Hepting, is here to talk to you a little bit about where we stand in the items that you find on the table in front of you this evening.
The sheet I passed out this evening is the same one you all received in your email the end of last month. After we received all our revenue estimates and put in our preliminary numbers, our preliminary shortfall was just over $3 million for next year. That has come down from our original estimates in March. As we have refined some of our revenue sharing numbers, we've gotten better numbers from the state. Different fringes and benefits, the effect of the PPO 8, as well as, what else do we have? as well as the revenues we've received from the departments. Some of them came in a little bit better than we had planned, and some had came in a little bit less. So at this time, the departments are working on what their plan is to meet their target numbers, and those are due back to administration by August 20th. And then we will be reviewing them, making sure that all the numbers work, and then we will be presenting to the board in October administration's recommended budget for next year. Along with the budget, our phase one for our EVIP, the Economic Vitality Incentive Program, that is due October 1st. So we are currently working on our accountability and transparency plan, and that document will be available on our website sometime by mid to end September. We have to have several years of historical data, as well as current year budget and projected next year's budget. It has to include a schedule of our debt and future debt, as well as our unfunded liabilities. So that will be coming here in the next month. We evaluated several software products that allow you to do that, and links to our website, but the state does require that you give them a hard copy report, so we decided that that's the route we'll go instead of using some of the other software products. Any questions?
Any feedback so far from elected officials or departments?
Not much. A couple questions here and there, a couple requests for some information, but not much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Greatop.
On the EVIP, is there anything on the horizon for this year, or are we looking at 2014 before we get anything?
We will receive approximately $1.3 million for the 2013 fiscal year.
Commissioner, item.
Just curious, how's the assessor looking at what's happening to property values? Are they still in free fall, or are they starting to level off? What's the status there?
They are getting a little bit better. The last estimate we received, they're still anticipating a 2% decline for taxable value next year. So that is what's built in right now to the 13 budget. If he comes forward towards the end of the year with something different, then we'll have to build that in.
There was, I think it was the front page of today's Times Herald, was some discussion about the volume and dollar value of average home sale was positive.
Yeah, it was creeping up.
More volume, a little higher average sale. I mean, it's a small, it's like a small sample. I'm trying to think, maybe 600 homes had sold in the first half of the year, and prices were up a couple $1,000, but.
I think the average was like 78,000.
Yeah, so that's good news.
Yeah,
Commissioner London?
we do ask Greg monthly for updates to make sure his estimates are still on target.
Does Greg give us any information, or could you give us any information on where we stand statewide versus other counties in terms of, or is that something that we should do? I should talk to him about?
Greg would be able to give you better information on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
Moving on to item B, the Employee Group Waiver Program, or EGWIP.
It's been several meetings since we've talked about the EGWIP program. And actually, the EGWIP program is part of a larger effort on the part of the board to try and work towards containing some of our retirement health care costs and extend the life of the retirement health care fund. What I've got in front of you is a couple of items. One is a memorandum dated August 1st, which spells out where we are with the process. And then attached to that, you will find, if you flip the page, a Q&A sheet, about a three-page Q&A sheet that was put together by the HR department that has been shared with the retirees. And you'll see also a screenshot of what you might find on the retirement system website and some of the information that is out there. This, again, is given to you just so you've got some more detailed information about what's going on with the EGWIP program. But what I really wanted to fill you in on a little bit is where we are with that process. You may recall several months ago, we started entertaining some proposals by 3 different entities to provide the county with this particular program. And what the program really does is it helps subsidize or reduce the costs of some of the medical coverage, primarily the drug and prescription coverage for retirees through some federal programs. We have received those 3 proposals. It looks as though the proposal from Blue Cross Blue Shield is the most competitive that we're looking at. And in fact, in working with Blue Cross Blue Shield to understand their proposal, we became aware of another opportunity that might actually end up saving the county some additional funds related to retirement health care at no change to the level of benefit that would be offered to retirees. And it's a Medicare Advantage program. So basically what we'd be doing is, in addition to the EGWIP program, which would help us with the retirement drug coverage, the Medicare Advantage program would move us from an entirely self-funded medical coverage for retirees to a fully insured post-65 health care program. We are in the process right now with Blue Cross Blue Shield to further negotiate some of the drug coverage that would be included. Our goal is to ensure that if we implement these changes, not only can we realize the cost savings, which I'll mention in a moment, but also that the disruption to service or disruption to coverage for retirees is minimized. So HR has been working very closely with Blue Cross Blue Shield to negotiate some special considerations for our prescription coverage so the change can be offered seamlessly. What we're looking at doing once we get to the point where we're comfortable with the agreement with Blue Cross is to approach the board and ask them to move forward with an understanding with Blue Cross to enter into an EGWIP program as well as the Medicare Advantage program effective January 1st. The decision has got to be made by the board prior to October 1st. So what we'd be looking at is coming to the board in September with this formal recommendation. If you would like, what we can do, if you'd like to know more about the Medicare Advantage program and what the potential impact is, we can certainly bring Blue Cross Blue Shield into a meeting and explain the program to the board. Or if you would just like to know one-on-one, we can certainly arrange for some conference calls or some meetings with the HR department and sit down and talk with them about how the program would benefit the retiree and what it would do to help with cost containment efforts with retirement health care. So right now we're looking at, we could potentially make a presentation from Blue Cross Blue Shield at a special board meeting that you've got scheduled for later this month. It's actually a budget meeting, but we could certainly bring Blue Cross in to spend about a half hour, if you'd like, talking about the Medicare Advantage and answering questions. That would give you time to learn a little bit more about the program. We'd bring the recommendation to you at your first meeting in September, and then take formal action at the full board meeting in September, if that's the way you would like to proceed.
Commissioner Rushing.
Yeah, I definitely would like a 10 to 15-minute presentation prior to. So if we're all here, we might have various questions that we wouldn't get if we did it individually. So it might get a better, so we're better prepared because it's very important to the county.
Yes.
And I
Yes,
do
it
have
is.
one question on the prescription. It might be a little off base, but if you have prescription drugs currently, and it's one of the expensive drugs and it's covered and everything, if somebody has these drugs, if they happen to lose them, and this might affect the sheriff, because depending on what drugs are out there, you saw the report on the pills, would a person be able to get that refilled under their health care? It might already be covered, but it's a question you're thinking about. If you lose your pills, is that person out, or they have to cover the full cost out of their pocket?
That's
That
that's
might be in
that's
the
a
Blue
very
Cross.
good question. Yes. Yeah.
Because otherwise, you might get additional drugs out. Somebody might say, I lost some.
Yeah, we don't
Okay, without doing more research, then I'm going to assume that if you lose them, you got to do an out-of-pocket expense, even if they'll refill your position. Okay.
Now, the other document.
I'm sorry,
oh,
do you have a question?
Well, I was just going to mention, to sort of make a comment and ask Bill, we did hear a couple presentations from a couple other places, and it seems to me, I'm just wondering if I'm thinking right here, did that bring Blue Cross Blue Shield into the discussion mode a little more and talking to us about issues on retirement health care, do you think? Or was that a good thing that we heard those presentations?
Well, I have no doubt that that may have motivated Blue Cross a little bit. I'm sure they realized we were serious, but there was also a change in the federal program that occurred late this spring that enabled Blue Cross to be a little bit more competitive than the smaller market healthcare providers like those that we had been meeting with.
Which allowed them to be more competitive, I think.
Exactly, which allowed them, you may recall from the presentations we received, they were talking about a program called Egg Whip with a Wrap. Certainly don't ask me what that was, but that was a program, and that really offered some very significant savings. Well, prior to this change in these federal rules, it's our understanding that large healthcare providers like Blue Cross, and there were many others throughout the nation, were unable to provide the Egg Whip with a Wrap. So as a result, they certainly couldn't put forward as competitive of a product as some of these smaller providers could. Federal government made some rule changes this spring, and as a result, it's more of a level playing field. And Blue Cross, yes, they recognized that we were serious, and they came forward with a very competitive proposal.
Yeah, would we, just to further, just one little sub-note there, will we still be classified as self-insured? You think, I mean, obviously you probably don't know yet for sure, but you think we're still going to remain?
Well, if we move forward with the Medicare Advantage program, that would move our post-65 retirees into a fully insured. So in other words, we'd be purchasing an insurance policy for those individuals. But all of the county employees and the pre-65 retirees would remain in the county self-insured plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Bill, have we informed the other bidders where we're at?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Informally, yes, we have. They've been calling and asking, and they realize we're still analyzing everything, but they also have seen the numbers.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you.
The last thing I want to do is just point out to the board, this single sheet that you see in front of you that's called Retirement Healthcare Cost Containment Efforts 2011 and 12. I thought it was important that, you know, we're nearing the end of the second year of working on this project. Probably around December of 2010, the Board of Commissioners formed a work group to begin working on this effort. Here it is August of 2012, and I thought it would be a good time to share with you what the results of the work that you've been doing along with the retirees and the other groups, Community Mental Health and Road Commission, what we've come up with, what the results have been. And you can see in 2011, the cost containment and funding efforts above and beyond what we would normally see totaled $5.6 million in changes. And those are demonstrated. The 5 primary changes that we've made are listed there. In 2012, the big change that you've made so far has been with the PPO4 and the prescription drug program, which incidentally just went into effect August 1st. That resulted in a savings of about $1.2 million to the retirement health care system. And if we move forward with the Blue Cross Blue Shield Egg Whip and the Medicare Advantage program, we're looking at an additional $862,000 in savings to the retirement healthcare program. And then you'll see down there the contributions that the Board of Commissioners have committed to the system for 2012 are budgeted at $1 million. So in total, if all of these changes go into play this year, we're looking at, over a 2-year period, some $8.6 million worth of cost containment efforts that the Board of Commissioners have made to the retirement health care system. That's very, very significant when you look at the annual cost and where we were a year and a half or 2 years ago with the funding of the program. So I think you should be very proud of yourselves for what you've done, and very happy with the work that the retiree groups that have been helping you with this, as well as the Road Commission and Community Mental Health. At the very bottom down there, you'll see where it says new health care coverage effective August 1st. This is just a list of the efforts that have been made by the county to inform the retirees of the kind of changes or the potential impacts of the moving from the PPO2 to the PPO4 would have on them. All of these efforts were made prior to August 1st, just to make sure that the retirees were fully aware of what was happening and how it might impact them. So I thought this might be useful to the board. That's it.
Commissioner Greatop.
Bill, at the bottom there where it says projected contributions from county only but does not include community mental health, why isn't the Road Commission even mentioned there?
The Road Commission, I believe, for 2012 has not committed or budgeted any contribution to retirement health care in 2012, correct? Yeah.
Commissioner Heidemann, you had a question?
Just a comment or two here. You know, when we started working on this was back when Sean was administrator controller, and the federal government said we had to separate the pension fund from the benefit fund.
Right.
And the pension fund is in really, really good shape.
Yes.
But it left the benefit fund in dire straits. And so some of these initiatives we started back when Sean was here, and I think all of us knew we had to continue down that path to make sure that that fund too is solid. And so hopefully if we can just hold even on this in the future, I think we'll be okay. Because I don't think any of us want to be talking about any more changes to retiree health care. And believe me, putting them on Medicare Advantage will make a huge difference for those that are over 65.
I was just going to say, if check on my math, Bill, help me to, by the 8.5 million roughly, that would be about a year and a half of additional. Was that about right?
Yeah, retirement health care right now, Carrie, if I'm correct, is right around $6 million in expenses.
So
Per
we've
year.
extended virtually about a year and a half of time just with the moves we've done right now, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
I would say that number is equal to that, but you have to remember that some of these are in perpetuity. So
Correct.
they'll repeat each year. Some of them are one-time shots, so this
Right.
has a much bigger impact than that even. Bill, the direct mailing for special circumstances, is that the hardship?
Correct.
Requalification?
Yes, it is.
So anybody that had hardship before basically has to requalify
Correct, yes.
under the new rules?
And this explains the process and that the benefit still exists, but here's what you need to do to continue.
Okay, thank you.
Good job.
Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to conceptual initiatives, and I believe we have a presentation tonight from Bruce, is it Kuffer, excuse me.
I just wanted to let the board know why we've brought Bruce here to talk about QBS. Back when Sherry was here, she was working on the professional services policy, and she had worked with administration with Jenny Posey to try and realign our policy with what was actually being done. They made a lot of headway on that. However, Sherry has now separated, and things have kind of fallen to the wayside a little bit. So we want to get that back on the agenda, and we'd like to talk about some methods that maybe we'd like to incorporate in that policy. So in an effort to do that, we'd like to present QBS to you as a possible option for purchasing to do bids. It's something that I think can be very beneficial in some of the more detailed types of bids. For example, our workers' comp or our banking bid. I think that this method can get us to the best products and the best value for the county, and really get us to a discovery to find out what we really need to meet the county's needs. So to that end, I would like to introduce Bruce Kauffer.
Thanks, Faye, and I appreciate the board inviting us to come. The qualifications, can everybody hear all right? Yes. Qualifications-Based Selection Coalition is really, it's an official nonprofit. We volunteer all our services. I'm a professional by trade. I've been in construction and engineering and so forth, but we volunteer our services to just be facilitators to come and do the very thing that you've asked us to do, to educate you or explain about a process you may or may not be familiar with, partly familiar with. So what I'm going to do today is go through a kind of a PowerPoint presentation, simple and to the point. QBS, Qualifications-Based Selection, is a method, if you choose to use it. It's very straightforward. It's not complicated, and it tends to become second nature once you use it, and it really gets you to the heart of a couple of important things on important projects or decisions. On discovery of things that you want to discover that are important to you, and communication. And those we've found over the years are important elements to make an informed decision. So that's kind of a sense of what QBS is about. So I'll go through this. If anybody wants to ask questions or save them to the end. I've also brought some handout material to share with you if you'd like, so you can really watch it and ask any questions you want. So with that, there's my name and there's our group, and let's get started with this. Make sure this works right. So what is QBS? What is Qualifications-Based Selection? It's a process that's objective. It's a flexible procedure, meaning it's not cast in concrete. It's more a thought process than anything else. Can everybody see all right? And allows you to interject things into that process that are specific to a particular project or a particular professional that you want to hire. So you can customize it, your thinking, to exactly the project that's involved. It's also nationally endorsed. This is nothing new. It's been around for a long time, used in most of the United States, in most states and organizations all the way up to the federal government. Our state MDOT, Michigan Department of Transportation, and Management and Budget actually use the process as well. And kind of a value balance and going through the thought processes this way is something that the governor is very excited about as well. So I want to make sure you understand as well that it is competitive. This is not a process where you just kind of pick. You go through, it's a competitive nature, but brings things onto the table along with a number of other criteria in making that decision. And I like to say the last point there, that QBS will raise your personal comfort level and lower your personal risk. I've found over the years that a lot of people that want to make a really good decision on their own, come to their own conclusion, many times are blocked from sharing that decision for a variety of reasons. And one of them is, I have found human nature, a lot of people don't want to stand up and say, okay, why did you make that decision? You know, they're not comfortable with that, even though they feel that they're right. So what QBS tends to do is give you ammunition, information, so that when you make the decision you want to make, that information is already there, clear, laid out for you to use. And I think, as a result, it kind of frees you up to make the decision you really want to make. Prior to a little bit of quick history, prior to 1939, most of the design work was done by federal employees. Didn't have a lot of professional consulting and professional services other than in the federal government. After that, AE selection, architects and engineers, there was a provision that started in 1939, and by 1947, Armed Services Procurement Act came into play. In 49, the Federal Property Administrative Act was included, and then we finally got to the Brooks Act that some of you might be familiar with, that really brought into the fold the aspect of, sure, we want to be competitive, we want prices that are good, but we also want to make sure, particularly on professional or qualified things, that we get a service that fits our situation. Remember, I said that most states, as you can see in blue, all the blue states are using QBS by statute at this point. QBS not in place in red, and the ones in yellow kind of follow the QBS situation. I'm talking on state level. So you can see that 90%, 95% of the United States already uses this process. Michigan history, to get more specific, in 1987, the legislators approved a resolution number 206 to kind of bring it into the fold and use it on the state level for selecting professional services. And then again in 2002, Public Act 504 was adopted and really brought the language actually into the government legislation, and the Office of Management and Budget actually, what they have said is, you're not mandated to use it, but we support it, and it's something that you ought to consider and use if you're comfortable with it. Here is the reason we like to show this slide is the QBS Coalition has supporters across the board, not only professional engineering, professional attorneys groups, professional surveys, a variety of the professionals you would use. You'll also note, if you look at certain numbers, APWA, MWEA, MML, MTA, those are all municipal type organizations. So there's a broad support on both ends of the spectrum that believe, and tend to use the QBS process. We have also provided information and educational sessions at MTA conventions, at the MML, with APWA, and of course, as I said earlier, MDOT has used it for a number of years and continues to use it on its projects, on its major projects. Who uses QBS? We found that local, state, and federal government agencies use it for procurement of professional services. I've also had communities that have said, could we use this process if we want to hire other professionals? I had a quick sidebar. Seaboing Township and the village of Seaboing, not too far away, said, could we use this? I had a talk with one of the township supervisors. He said, could we use this to hire a new attorney? I said, you could. And they said, what for? We're going to merge our public safety to the township and the village, and we think this would be a good idea. Long story short, I went up, facilitated a couple of sessions with them, kind of walked them through the process. The two got together, started talking. I was told that those two communities had not talked to each other in about 40 years, and they didn't even know why, but it facilitated communication. They used it, they hired a professional, and it worked out great for them. So, I think the reason it did is because they were able to discover what was important for both of them and put that on the table with the cost consideration, so that when they went out to look for a professional, they were very comfortable that they had enough detail to go after the professional organization that they wanted, and it worked out very well for them. You also see other public and private institutions use it, school systems, design professionals, and others use the service and product situation in place of putting quality first. One of the things I can poke at my own professional organizations about is we have allowed, in many cases, engineering and those kinds of services to become more a commodity than a professional service. And I think that does a disservice to both the community and the professional that you're trying to hire, because they don't get to use the, I guess, the brain power that they need to use to do your job properly. So it's important when you are going after that kind of service that you balance those, and QBS helps you balance it. A quick example is, obvious, but we always like to bring it up. You wouldn't hire an eye doctor by low bid. Not a good idea. And why? Because you wouldn't feel comfortable not knowing, are they good, are they experienced, is it one that I can check references on, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just a simple example that helps illustrate that. Engineering professional services, they're not commodities, and the reason being, when you hire either engineers or other professionals, they have a multitude of experience or expertise that you might want to take advantage of. They might be looking for innovations, keeping things up to date on things that you're after, that you're not able to keep up with on your own, but definitely the professional that you want to hire would. The latest technologies and a high degree of professional competence. You want to have someone that knows what they're doing and in a way that they can address the needs that you've identified for them. And QBS can help you do that. The old familiar situation is, why not low bid? And I also want to say, you kind of get what you pay for. However, I also am very clear to point out, qualification-based selection does not preclude that the person that has a low initial number can't be hired. They absolutely can. It's not a situation where that's ignored. That's one of the values that they bring to the process as well. So what it does is brings the other things to the table along with the financial responsibility, so you really get someone you're comfortable with. And of course, you've got two ways you can find out about whether you've got the right professional for the right project. You either can find out before you select them, or you can find out after. And too many times you find out after, and that gets expensive, and who pays for that? It either becomes a burden of the county, in this case, or it becomes a battle. And neither one of those solutions are good. So the thing that we like to focus on, particularly on the professional side, if you look at this pie chart, you can see the illustration that operation and maintenance is a huge part of this pie situation, the whole pie. Construction, of course, as well. And engineering, or the professional study, design, concept services, is a very small portion of it. And the reason we like to illustrate that is, if you get all kinds of flexibility or change in engineering, the overall project through construction and ultimately designing and operating it for years to come, it's a minor amount. So the point we're trying to show is, carefully pick the professional you want, and don't be too concerned if one is a little bit higher or lower than other. As long as they're competitive, you feel that they're qualified, it kind of allows you to pick the one that you feel is most qualified to give you the proper construction, capable construction, of course their own engineering services, and put together a situation where the O&M is going to be much more efficient as you go along from year to year to year. And that can be a huge savings or a huge cost. And I'm sure you gentlemen can illustrate and tell me about examples where you've had those either bad experience or good experiences. I hear it all the time. So this is something that helps you get closer to the reality that you want. Challenges in engineering and products, of course. Timely delivery. You want to be fiscally responsible. That's a given, and that is not ignored. But you also want the quality and the innovation part if those factor into it. And all that, of course, as you can see, is wrapped around social and socioeconomical needs. So I think this process helps to show your public and to allow the Board of Commissioners to make decisions in a way that makes it clear that the competitiveness is there and that you can really get to the heart of the decision you want to make. And it can be as detailed or as general as you like. We've had situations where we've helped communities and boards go through. They might, on a particular project, have 5 or 6 or 7 items that are the criteria for their decision. And others, there might be 3 or 4. So again, it's flexible, it can be whatever you want. QBS is not so much a procedure on paper, but a thought process that you can follow and walk through. And I'm going to go through those steps with you. It's kind of like choosing, you know, if you choose quality first and then decide what you can afford, it's kind of like illustrating, of course you want a car, but to some people, you know, it's 4 tires, a vehicle that gets me to point A to B. Others, it's a particular brand, a particular class, a particular style, and sometimes it's kind of in between. What QBS allows you to do is ferret that all out and decide, in whether it's in the $500 category or the $80,000 category, what is it that we want in that particular situation. So it really helps you define that. Long-term costs, the excess of any major project, starts with the selection of an appropriate design professional. And what I like to say, as you see on the bottom there, fair competition, in other words, that you're comfortable with, you can pretty much see it as a quality result. Low bid, you kind of get what you pay for. But again, I want to reiterate that does not preclude that someone with the lowest appropriate price won't fit and won't be selected. They absolutely can at times. So you're looking at, you know, construction costs that you'd like to keep competitive, A&E costs, of course, as well, and lowest life cycle costs. All of that kind of wraps into the value of what you want to use to make your decision, and QBS will help get you to that point. So very quickly, what is the process? Well, the process, it's not complicated, but there's a number of steps that you can basically follow. And first of all, the owner identifies the general scope of a project. What is it you want to accomplish? What is it you want to build? What is it you want to design? And identify a schedule for selection. Not a schedule for construction, but how are we going to get to selecting our professional? A request for qualification goes out. In other words, you put out the request. I'm sure you've done this many times before. And it has on it the criteria that you've decided are important for that particular project. You respond back, they send in their statements of qualification, you evaluate those in an expeditious manner, and you shortlist to possibly, I see a lot of the times they'll shortlist to 3 or 4, usually 3, depends on how many you have, definitely at least 2, and then ask those that have been shortlisted to come in for interviews. One of the key reasons I think interviews are important, I can give you a quick example. The county executive and the city manager up in Traverse City. Some of you may know of the dam evaluation and reconstruction, or I should say elimination of certain dams that are going to be taken out of the Boardman River. It's a highly famous blue ribbon trout stream. There is no right or wrong answer. They were going to have people that were going to be concerned whether dams came out or left in. They decided they wanted to use the QBS process, and what it illustrated very vividly for them, I personally went up and educated them on the process, is I told them really on the study phase, it's not even about removing dams or evaluating and leaving a dam in. It's about communication. I said, you're going to hire a professional that's going to work with you for probably 2+ years. You're going to have people upset or happy no matter what the decision is, whether you leave or take something out. And it's all going to be about how they communicate with you. Are they in sync with you as a board? And are they in sync with the audience and the people that are waiting to hear what's going on and wanting to know what's going on? What finally happened was they had shortlisted to 3. They had, in their minds, one clear choice through the evaluation criteria that they picked, and 2 kind of down here. And they said, Bruce, he said, it's clear. We don't even have to do interviews. We've got the one that we know we want. I said, okay, you can do that, but how about having the interview, because it is all about communication. What better place to find out about communication than in an interview before you hire them? They did that. 1 went to 3, 3 went to 1. It was a complete reversal. Now, that doesn't always happen. Probably most of the time it does not happen. But it did in this case, and it vividly illustrated a point to them that, you know, the one we thought was the best, on paper, they were. They didn't have a clue. They didn't know how to talk to us. They didn't know how to communicate with us. We didn't get a feeling at all that they knew how to relate this project to the outside world. So it was a huge learning experience, and the illustration of going through that exercise helped them a great deal. The owner then invites the highest ranked firm, they'll rank them obviously 1 to 3, to come in, finalize a work scope, make sure that both, in this case, the county and the prospective consultant or professional clearly understands what you want. You're communicating on that level. They put a final price to it. Then if you like that price, you finalize the contract and away you go. If you decide that we just can't come to an agreement here, they don't understand what we want to do, or they can't do it within a budget that we can afford, then you cut off the conversation and you go to the next one. So you ultimately have all the control on how they're selected and how the final result comes in that regard. So you can make sure that you get what you want. And of course, if that's done and you're able to come to an agreement, then the agreement is executed, and of course you let the other firms know that you appreciated their involvement. Some of the quick things that come into play on the evaluation criteria. What are the kind of things, people ask me, what are the kind of things that we ought to ask? I said, other than the things you already know you want to ask. For example, let's say a project is involved in a tight time frame because of a grant program. Timing is everything. Do they have the staff? Do they have the expertise to get it done in time? Another might be, do they have the proper training? Do they have the expertise that will fit our project? How about the references? Are their references good? Can we check? You'd be surprised. Companies that give references, you call them, and unfortunately people have to be very careful on what they say, but they don't get good references at all. People will give them references that aren't good ones. So, you know, you do need to check references, of course, and I'm sure you do, gentlemen, and experience and availability. Do they have the staff available to do the job? So why QBS has that strength then? I think a couple of the key points: through thorough evaluation of the candidates, QBS allows you to do that, to look at the candidates you want, not only from a fiscal responsibility, but can they do our job in the way we want it done, so that ultimately it's really probably the best cost we'll get. And compare quality, of course, to make sure that we get the organization we want, right firm, right project, right price. And I can't stress it enough, the example I gave you, matching personality with the client. That's key. I have heard story after story where organizations have hired a professional and then found out after the fact that the connection as far as communication and getting the job done is not good at all, or it's not good enough. So this is something that, if that's important to you, that's a way to ferret that out. And pay too much is unwise, pay too little is even worse, because if you don't pay enough, you're never going to get what you really wanted. If you pay too much, there's obviously you don't want to do that, but there's a smaller downside in that regard. So what I've brought as handouts tonight is I've got a detailed workbook. We'll share those with you if you'd like. Also, on the public municipal side, APWA put together a red book on qualification-based selection. That's available. I make that available to the board as well. And there's a interactive CD that a few of the professional organizations with Michigan Municipal League's blessing and help put together an interactive CD-ROM years ago, and in that CD-ROM there's a good explanation of QBS. And then finally, one of the things that people ask a lot, and this was done most recent within the last few years, what is the result of QBS? How do we know it works? Does it really give us some advantage over doing it in a low bid situation? And a study was done throughout the United States, independent, and it was done in conjunction with APWA and other organizations with the engineering companies and American Public Works Association, so it was definitely bipartisan in that regard. Those are the gentlemen that put it together, and the motivation was prove it. Show us that this really works. Give us some hard facts that this is something that really helps us. So we did that, and that I have a couple of copies of that available. If you'd like me to leave those with you, I will. And what it found, some of the key findings in that report: QBS helped to ensure cost effectiveness, which is probably at the top of your list. You need that. That's definitely one. QBS lowers risk for complex projects. I've given you a few explanations on that. QBS results in better projects and highly qualified and satisfied owners and professionals. And QBS takes into account emerging socio and economic issues. Whereas with environmental sensitivity, with economic innovation and wanting to do more with less but still have a good result, this process will give you the chance to discover that, pull that out of the professionals that you want to hire. And they're eager to respond that way because they know the more you know about a particular organization, the better chance they have of being hired. So that's very important. And it's got a lot of support from municipalities. So with that, I went through that rather fast. If you've got some questions, which I hope you do, I'd be more than happy to try and answer a few. And I will also leave with Faye a couple of copies of that report and a copy of this slideshow in case you'd like to see it. She'll have that as well. Does anyone have a question you'd like to ask me?
Commissioners, questions? Seeing none, we thank you for coming and providing
You're
this
welcome.
information.
And if you have any other, if something comes up in the past, you can get with Faye and get that back to us. We'll be glad to answer that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Moving on, old business, professional services agreement renewal with Strategic Federal Affairs. That revised contract is in your packet. Commissioner Rushing.
What's the cost in comparison to previous?
Our original contract with SFA, which was back in, I think it was 2008, was about $7,500 a month or $90,000 a year. In 2010, we negotiated it down by $1,000 a month. They've asked that we increase it back up to the original rate of $7,500 a month in return for these grant writing services that they would offer.
Well, that get to my next question. If there's a period of time during the year, let's say they only use 6 months where they're actually doing work on grants, are we going to be required to pay the $1,000 for the months they don't? Because it said an option of $1,000, and it's $1,000 a month. If they're not doing any grant work, are we still going to pay them?
Well, one of the things that we've actually included in this contract, which has changed since June when this initially came to you and we asked you to put it on hold, was there's a 6-month test period where we're giving them 6 months to begin introducing the service, see if we're happy with it, happy with the results, and if we're not, then we back off down to the $6,500 a month instead of the $75,000. The other thing that we've done and that we've included in here to address that issue is something that Commissioner Samasco asked us about, and that was some type of performance measures. And if you look further back, I think it's marked page 16, attachment 2, we've established some performance measures that we'll be judging them by, and actually the planning department, which will be the lead contact for SFA, will be tracking the kind of information that we receive from SFA, the leads that we're receiving, as well as how effective they are.
Who currently drafts these grants for us?
Right now, it's whatever department is working on them. A lot of them are drafted by the planning department. A lot of them are drafted by the health department. The Sheriff's Department puts together a lot of grants. Some folks within central administration do it.
Going to put these
Parks
all
and
under
Rec.
one umbrella for all the grants will be written by them?
Well, what we'll be doing is creating a clearinghouse, again, which will be the planning department. So any of the grant announcements that come in from the lobbyist group, currently they come in to myself, to Ms. Morris and Ms. Posey, and we kind of distribute them. Now they'll all be coming into the planning department. They will distribute them out to all the other departments. So in addition to what they receive through their professional organizations and contacts, anything that we get from SFA will come through that one point of contact. What you'll also notice that we've done on page 14 is Dina Alderdice, who is our grant accountant, and Dave Struck, the planning director, spent some time trying to establish some priorities on the types of grants that we'd be looking at in particular that fit the needs of the county. And we went back to the original list of priorities that this board set about 1.5 years ago and used those to develop the list. We then decided, what role do we want SFA to play? Do we want them to search for the grants, to lead the writing effort, to just assist with the writing, and to advocate or support us? So that's what you'll see illustrated here on this list. So we've tried to define what it is that they're going to do that they didn't do in the past, and how they may assist the sheriff as he develops a grant. Certainly the kind of grants like the one he received today, the JAG grant, that's something they have received probably 6-8 years on a fairly regular basis. We certainly don't want to engage SFA for writing those kinds of grants because it's something his staff can do pretty quick now. But there are certainly other grant opportunities that come across our desk that the sheriff may be interested in that he may not have the time to develop. He may not have the knowledge that's necessary to put the whole package together, and we would ask SFA to do that on his behalf and certainly work with his staff. So that was the purpose of developing this chart, is to try and better define whose roles, what role it is that SFA will play versus the roles of county staff and departments.
Excuse me, Bill, so the idea is not only will they help us with grants that we've worked on in the past, but they'll bring us opportunities that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise seen.
Correct. As well as we want them to start exploring private foundation opportunities as well that may exist out there, which we really don't have much of a connection to at all.
If I understand it too, SFA will be a tool, the planning department will be the gatekeeper, so to speak, correct?
Correct.
That if you have a
Yes.
go-to question, if you have a question as a department head or person submitting for grant, they can go to the planning department. The planning department will be the gatekeeper, say, I think you need assistance with this, to this degree, to this nature, and it's just another tool they can use because we felt that we didn't have a lot of expertise in grant writing, and I think a lot of it in successful grant writing does come down to the need for some specialized ability, so.
The only concern I had is, well, Tim's sitting here, is that right here, it all sounds positive. But I don't want him to step on his toes or we lose grants because they take over something. So I don't want to lose
You're
grants.
thinking SFA is gonna compete with the grant the sheriff's applying for?
Right. If, something that we're already doing internally, if they do it or not do it, I don't want to lose grants that we.
This is gonna coordinate all that, correct?
Right, and what we're hoping is that it will actually relieve the sheriff's staff from doing some of this work and open up some doors that he may not know exists, or open up some doors to some funding opportunities that his staff currently doesn't have the time to develop those grant
On the
applications.
surface, I imagine you're comfortable with this.
I actually apologize, I had a work call, I stepped out during a lot of that, so I didn't hear this. But I do know that we should compete with all the other law enforcement agencies for grants, and, you go to your seminars, and you get leads, and that works, but everybody holds it close to the vest. There's not much money out there, that being other law enforcement agencies. So having an outside professional agency that specializes in this, I think will be able to open up additional doors to benefit us, most certainly. Our officers, we've got a talented staff, but, when it's all settled, their job's chasing cops and robbers.
It's like having an extra bird dog.
Absolutely.
Other questions? Is there a motion?
I would make a motion that we move it on to the full board.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Under new business, item 7A, the sheriff is requesting a manning table change.
Move we, oh, he's going to explain.
Go ahead, you can make your
I'll
motion.
move that we forward this to the full board.
Okay.
Is there support?
Or,
Okay.
That's fine. There's another one that wasn't on there that we talked about also as well, that would not go to committee, but you have the document on this manning table change, which was a position that is funded through the DSEMIC, which is the Detroit Southeastern Michigan Intelligence Information Center, which is a mouthful, but it fully funds a deputy's position, and we were looking to replace that position because it's fully funded.
Tim, the only question I had is, you know, grants or programs kind of come and go. You know, say 2-3 years down the road, this
Right.
program is eliminated. Is your thought that you could bring that deputy back in and find a spot for him, just attrition?
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is funded through the UASI, Urban Area Security Initiative. It's 7 counties in the city of Detroit, going from all southeastern Michigan, ending at Washtenaw County. We're the very tip on the eastern end. They're the very tip on the western end with city of Detroit right in the middle. This is the future in law enforcement as far as intel gathering, so there's a strong commitment, particularly with the level of violence we're seeing in Detroit, moving east, west, north, and south. They're committed to funding this. They will not lock in and say that it's here for 10 years or 20 years, but it is certainly, it's a big program down in Detroit with representatives from all of the above-mentioned counties, so everybody is involved in this. So I do believe it'll be funded in the future, and if that time comes, he would be absorbed into where retirement would come to
Okay.
place on.
Questions for the sheriff? If not, we have a motion and support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I do want to bring up one item. Earlier today, we received a notice from the sheriff's office of another change in their manning table they'd like to make. There are a number of outstanding questions that we're working on trying to answer, and what we would like to do is be able to come back to the board at your full board meeting later on this month with that additional request and ask that the board, if you're happy with the information that's presented, take final action to adjust that the manning table for that position as well.
And I can touch on that.
You're gonna add that to the agenda for the full board,
Correct.
so it'll be a posted item.
Correct.
Nothing would prevent us from taking action on it, even though it wasn't before this committee.
Correct. And between now and then, we'll develop all the detail and the additional reports that, similar to what you see here for that position.
Right, there was some miscommunication from my captain with the office, so it did not land on the agenda. I thought it was on, but it was not, and that was on our responsibility. In a nutshell, what it is our transfer coordinator position was a deputy that was in charge of the logistics of moving federal inmates throughout Michigan. Well, as you can imagine, that position grew from 3 to 4 employees to 12 employees. Having a deputy supervising 12 other deputies is not an ideal situation. I had an extremely talented deputy in that position, so I didn't change things. He retired this month. With him retiring, we would prefer to take one of our deputy positions in corrections, make that a sergeant's position. We're not going to replace the deputy position. That being, the supervisor now will be in charge of the transfer division. In the jail, our day shift ratio, command to supervision, is a 1-to-8. 1 supervisor for 8 deputies on nights, 1-to-9 on day shift, and the transfer is 1-to-12. So it most certainly needed supervision. It puts a deputy in a difficult spot to give orders to 12 of his coworkers. We ran this by the union. The union okayed this because they're losing a deputy position. We needed to talk to the union about it. They're also gaining another promotional opportunity. So the union was good with this. The only cost difference is the wage from a topped-out deputy, which is what this deputy was, to a sergeant. So there's some wage adjustment, nothing that is tremendous, but it certainly makes the operation run smoother. And the transfer coordinator is extremely important. He's on the phone every day with the U.S. Marshals, every day with Immigration, every day with Federal Bureau of Prison, as well as our local judges, moving inmates everywhere, because we have the contract for the entire eastern side of the Michigan. So it's a big position at the sheriff's office. We've got a sergeant working it now, and the two real keys are people skills and logistics ability, and he has both those. So we've got the right guy in the position right now, Sergeant Wachowski. So that is it in a nutshell, but I can go into great detail in 2 weeks. If you have any questions, I could try right now for you.
Any questions? Commissioner Greatop?
Not particularly on that, but I was thinking about the 5 deputies that you've taken on from Algonac. Does that require a manning table change, or does that just automatically fit in with approving the contract?
I think that was part of the motion that, and certainly was part of the recommendation with the adoption of the contract.
Okay.
Is it-
They go with the contract.
Just wanted to make sure it was covered.
Yeah, the deputies typically go with all of the contracts.
Good.
With the contract, it's in the contract, is what you're
Right.
saying.
Right. In fact, they went as far as in the contract that we would look at their employees first, and we would come back with whether they passed the standards, and all 5 did. So that made for a additionally smooth transition with Algonac. They were, utmost concern was their employees. They knew they had to save money and change the way they were doing things, but they also had loyal employees. I think the most junior had 12 years on the department. So these are not new police officers, or long-term people that have long roots in Algonac, and they've been good, loyal employees. So, you know, the board was looking after their folks, and we're able to land them all jobs, and it's a better fit for them, both with as far as economically safer.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on, did we vote 7A?
We did not vote.
Okay, we had a motion and support.
We have a motion and support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. You're welcome.
Item 7B, Resolution 1225, adopting the 80/20 cost-sharing model, Public Act 152 of 2011. Mr. Kaufman, you want to just give us a little update on this?
Sure. Every year, the elected body of all public institutions must make a decision on how they want to deal with one of the EVIP requirements, which Carrie Epting pointed out to you a little bit earlier, what that program was all about. It really affects the revenue sharing that we receive. In the past, the Board of Commissioners have chose option number 2 that you see here, which is to adopt by a majority vote the 80/20 cost-sharing model. We are in the process right now of putting together the budget for 2013, and as a means of assisting us in developing the budget model, as well as complying with the EVIP requirements in time for the deadline, we are asking the board to adopt this resolution, which continues the practice of the board in the past, which is to pursue the 80/20 cost-sharing model for health care insurance. And that, again, will go into effect for those bargaining units whose contracts have expired. And you may recall last year we extended most all of the bargaining unit contracts until December of 2013. There is a group of bargaining units, however, that would be affected by this change, and whose contracts have expired.
And I would add that the revision or the original presentation that was in your packet has been revised. The revision was emailed to you, and as well as at your place. Commissioner Greatop.
To qualify for the EVIP, options 1 or 2 obviously look like they fit, but 3 and 4 would not fit. Am I reading that correctly? That if you elected to not follow the statute, non-compliance?
Well, what we've been told in the past by the state is if the Board of Commissioners decide not to comply with the statute or opt out, that it would impact our revenue sharing allocation, yes.
Other questions?
Just briefly, didn't the 80/20 cost share, weren't we pretty much doing that anyway, Bill? I mean, that
Yes.
was- It's not like we're
Yes,
doing
we are.
something new. We were way ahead of this game, and we implemented these things, so when this came down, it happens to fit what we were doing primarily.
Correct, yes.
Anything else? Is there a motion?
No.
I would move this on to full board for vote.
I would love to support Commissioner Samasco, if I may.
You may do so.
I'll let Madam Secretary decide and gets jotted down for that.
I will concede.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Are there other ways and means matters? Seeing none, there is nothing informational only. Is there a motion to receive and file packets?
So moved?
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to
Opposed?
adjourn?
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Stand adjourned.